All right, welcome back. This is Capital Ideas TV Live. I'm Mark Bunting. Thanks for joining us. We just wanted to fix the audio there. Our guest today is Kiril Mugerman, the president and CEO of Kintavar Exploration. You can ask questions of Kiril by typing them into the chat section on the right-hand side of our YouTube channel, which you're watching right now. We'll try to get to as many as we can throughout the show. Now, we'll get to Kiril in a moment, but first we want to take a look at why there's reason to get excited about Kintavar's projects in Quebec. Now we're going to show you a picturesque scene from the Grenville region of southern Quebec. While it may be beautiful on top, it's what lies below that has the local mining community abuzz. Grenville is home of the Michi project, a stretch of land that showed early promise but was never fully explored. Kintavar Exploration recently returned to that once forgotten property and is now revealing some massive potential. Michi has three main corridors: Nasagon, Hispana, and Sherlock. Early exploration work by Kintavar suggests the trio are flush with significant copper resources. Now, mineralization starts at the surface and extends far outward, allowing for plenty of open pit potential. What's more, the Michi project is accessible year-round by roadways and has easy access to nearby hydropower. With all the key ingredients in place, Kintavar Exploration believes it's onto something big in Quebec. It's a matter of quantifying just how sizable it might be. Now, before we introduce the CEO, Kiril Mugerman, let's have a look at his bio board. He is the president and CEO of Kintavar Exploration, also the president and CEO of GeoMega Resources, TSX listed company. The ticker there is GMA. And we'll talk about that more later. How the heck do you do that? Manage two companies, not just one. He was an exploration geologist with Gold Fields, a mining analyst with Industrial Alliance Securities, and education-wise, he has a Bachelor of Science from McGill University in Earth and Planetary Sciences. Now that sounds heavy. So Kiril is right here, and it's great to see you, sir.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me here.
So let's talk first about what brought you to the Abitibi, Grenville, and southern Quebec region in the first place. What appealed to you?
So I guess we are going back to 2015, 2016. Mining sector was pretty down. And we started looking at a transaction, a spin-out transaction from GeoMega Resources that you mentioned earlier, which is becoming more and more a technology company. So it didn't really make sense for us to keep the exploration assets within GeoMega. So we started forming this new company, Kintavar. And so we looked at quite a few projects. I mean, you're looking at a really bad period of the mining sector. And quite a few projects were available. So we came across that one. My VP of exploration, Alain Caillé, who is very well respected in the Quebec geological community, he's the geologist that discovered the Eleanor, that we know became a very big success. So he's been familiar with this project from many, many years ago, and we looked at it again. And luckily what happened was the local prospecting community in that region, which is basically around the Mont-Laurier region, which Mont-Laurier is considered a pretty big town for that part of Quebec. It's, let's say, the last big town before you hit the Abitibi, the Val d'Or regions. And so the prospector there started putting together the entire package, and they were following up on some of the historical work from Noranda. So, and that's really the main thing that attracts everybody every once in a while to look at this. In 1971, Noranda worked on that project. I'm not sure for how long, probably for maybe a month or 2 months. They flew in a team. They did shallow drilling, really. When we are talking about shallow drilling in 1971, you're talking about portable drill rigs. So you drilled 100 feet, so around 30 meters of drill core, which is, I believe, remember the name of the PQ, or no, it's not PQ. PQ is a big one, but it's basically the thickness of your thumb. Okay. And they drilled out 15 holes for a total of 380 meters. So it's really not that much. And they hit mineralization, but really the most important thing for them is they hit marbles. And we know that marbles with copper and silver mineralization is often associated with skarn deposits. But we know geologically that skarn deposits have to be high grade and and are usually small. So what happens here, you come across what looks like a skarn deposit in those shallow drill holes that they did, but instead of being Instead of being stratiform copper, what we now discovered, they called it at the time a low-grade skarn deposit. So but you automatically go into the situations like, oh, it's a skarn deposit, it has to be high grade, but it's low grade, so let's walk away from it. So 1971, they walk away with the drill holes of 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5% copper. And that's it. Since then, it's been known as one of those, oh, it's a low-grade skarn in the Grenville. So nobody really ever followed up on it. Noranda even followed up in 2002, did a bit of geophysics, but never there was any significant trenching. There was no drilling, so it was really virgin.
Right.
So then that's where we got involved, and we really, we were the first team to put there all the equipment, the geologists on the ground, and we really started trenching the whole area. And that's through the trenching that we came across with more and more mineralization. We were like, something's wrong here. It doesn't look like a typical skarn. So one of the geologists that is involved with us as a technical consultant is Michel Gauthier, who as well was involved with Eleanor, and very well renowned geologist. And he knows his metamorphic conditions very well, and he's really good for reconstructing the geological conditions there. And we managed to build the geological model that today we call stratiform copper.
So what is the potential for the main Michi project and the three-quarter? And can you compare it to other projects in Quebec? And even, I know you've compared it to the potential of some of the other projects around the world as well.
So if you compare it, so it's unique in the situation where, a stratiform copper deposit, if we go into the definition of what it is, you're looking at a sedimentary basin, where the sedimentary basins form within an ocean, so a prehistoric basin. And usually we know that in an ocean, the basin is flat, right? And if you look at the classical examples of stratiform copper today in the DRC or in Poland, those are underground deposits, shallow dipping. Somebody found them on surface, and then they just followed the mineralization. So in the Congo, the mineralization is around 500, 600 meters depth. But you are looking at a thickness of 3 to 10 meters and very high grades. Different geological conditions did a super enrichment of the mineralization there, which is why it's a unique situation there. But in our case, it was the exact same thing, but instead of being flat and underground, it all got folded as part of that Granville deformation. So when everything gets squished like an accordion, you basically have those accordions sticking out on surface.
Okay.
So that's why you can't really compare it, because it's the first time there is a stratiform copper that's present in this shape and form. But you do have other stratiform coppers in North America. There are a few of them, but they're usually a couple of meters thick and 1 to 2 or 3% copper. So from an underground point of view, they're hard to mine, or some of them have been mined and are no longer in operation. And some of them are very hard to put into production. They're less than a meter thick. So how do you go underground for that? But now here in this case, you have this one strata, or that layer, they got folded. That accordion is now on surface. And if you look at it as a squished material, you're suddenly looking at multiple layers, or the same layer that you will hit several times in the same drill hole. So we call that structural thickening. And we had the site visit during the summer. We were able to show it to some of the analysts and the investors, where the same layer you're going to get multiple times. And it's all, because it's all on surface, you have this open pitable potential, which stratiform copper deposits are usually not known for open pit, because they are flat and underground.
And Kiril, tell us about the infrastructure at the ready, on hand here.
Okay, so the infrastructure was one of the other things that attracted us. We have a couple of set criteria for us when we select projects. One of them is we want to be accessible by road. We don't want to be flying helicopters, because we know that it's very expensive. And if you're very up north, you have to fly helicopters or planes. So you burn all your money on the infrastructure, on transporting yourself there, instead of actually doing the exploration. So when we selected that project, one thing, you can access both the southern portion of the project and the northern portion of the project by road. The northern portion is actually accessible by a road that you can drive 90 kilometers an hour all the way from Montreal to the project. That's one. So road is taken care of. Why is the infrastructure there? Because of the logging industry. The logging industry in the Laurentians is very well developed. This entire area has been logged for so many years already. So you have lots of roots. So even once you get on the project, even within the project, you have lots of gravel roads. But then the second thing is your camps. So if you go up north in Quebec, quite often you have to build temporary camps, fly camps. Well, here you don't really have that situation. You have what we call in French pourvoiries. You have 3 of them, so outfitters. Their main business is obviously renting for hunting, for fishing, different winter sports activities. So all those buildings are there. And what do? We just rent and we use the existing facilities. So for us, it's great because we don't have to invest in building all of it. And the final thing, the largest one of those outfitters in the north called Fer à Cheval has a capacity of 150 people. I mean, it's unheard of to have an exploration project with such a large camp already right there on the site. So part of the summer we use their facilities, and the other portion of their infrastructure they've been renting to the logging companies. And the final touch on this was 5 years ago they brought in a high voltage power line there. So you have an electric line on project that until recently has not been known, and we were cutting core and using grid power this entire summer. So road, camps, and power, everything is there.
All right, very good. Now update the Michi project for us. You had some drilling results in October, and you say they were a bit of an eye-opener for you. How come?
So look, when we started working on the project, June of 2017, it was pure surface work. We really were trying to understand what is this skarn deposit that Noranda walked away from. And that's when we started, seeing the stratiform copper model. Then we said, okay, we have to go and drill it. So we drilled it and got very good results, 120 meters of 0.34% copper, 130 meters of 0.31% copper from surface. Mineralization starts from surface, goes to roughly, we drilled as deep as 200 meters vertical with still mineralization. But then the question was, okay, how big is it? So we know that using geophysics and magnetics, we can follow the favorable marble stratigraphy in each corridor for roughly 10 kilometers. So that's where the model became, okay, if this is stratiform copper, and we know that sedimentary basins within an ocean are pretty big, because oceans are not small, then we could be sitting on a monster project. So this summer, a little bit of the work in the beginning focused on Sherlock, just to confirm what we drilled in the winter. But really after that, we started looking at that regional extent. So if you have 10 kilometers of favorable stratigraphy in each corridor, can we go and demonstrate? And that's why it's such an eye-opener. No matter where we went, with trenching, with drilling, we got mineralization. So if you look at it today, with drilling, we were able to demonstrate mineralization for over a kilometer right now in drilling. If you follow the surface mineralization in trenching, grab samples, we are looking already at over 4 kilometers. That's only in the Sherlock corridor. If you add up all the corridors together, you're looking well over 6 kilometers of mineralization that we were able to put together. And it's just, you can't imagine, if I was to tell you that, oh yeah, there's a project with 6 kilometers of mineralization on surface, and nobody still found it, 4 hours north of Montreal, you'd say, no, impossible. Everybody already been through it. So that's why it's been such an eye-opener for us to think that there's so much mineralization sitting there, and you walk there and you're like, you pick up a rock, okay, bornite mineralization, oh, chalcopyrite, and chalcocite as well, but you don't really see the chalcocite. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's just been unbelievable. Wherever we extended our footprint, we found mineralization.
Kiril, we're looking at the Sherlock corridor
yes.
graph here. You wanted to speak to this. What can you tell us about this?
So that's a good case study for us. So on the right side, or on the screen, maybe it's on the left side, so Sherlock. So that's the original Sherlock trench from 2017 summer. And as you can see, the trench there is 0.49% copper over 21 meters. When we went and we drilled underneath this trench, we got, the drill hole 3 was 120 meters of 0.34. Then one hole to the west gave us 130 meters of 0.31, and one hole to the east gave us 83 meters of 0.42% copper. So that gives you an example of what do you find on surface, and then when you go and drill underneath it, you see how big the intervals are. And then here's an example on the left side, the Conan Trench. So Conan was discovered in September of this year. Again, it's the same dirty marbles. As you can see by the color, they're roughly the same as those black units here.
Okay.
On surface, it gives us 0.48% copper over 12 meters, but it hasn't been drilled yet. And this trench extends further in both directions, but the overburden becomes too deep. More than 3 meters, it becomes unsafe to excavate. So here we had to stop at 12 meters. And this is what we are looking for on surface. We look for this type of mineralization. We then trench it. We see 12 meters, 0.5, 0.4% copper. Great, we go and drill underneath it. So this is one of the targets that we are targeting to drill this fall. So right now we have an active drilling program going on.
You're watching Capital Ideas TV. We're live with Kiril Mugerman, the president and CEO of Kintavar Exploration, explaining the project and the mineralization as well. So what's the roadmap here, and what are the economics, do you think, or is it too early to even get into that?
We have a couple of internal numbers that we are starting to play with. Obviously, it's hard to put together the economics so early when you have such a large project. I mean, what's the best area to work with? Am I missing something? Is there a better area? So that was one of the questions that we wanted to address this summer. The idea was, okay, we know Sherlock is there. We know that Watson is to the west, then we found Toby this summer, then we found Elementary, we found Conan, we have a 007. I mean, you have so many zones. It's almost confusing. But this was the objective of the summer, and this is only in one corridor. Then we have the Ispana corridor that you mentioned before, and Nasigon in the north. And they're all part of the exact same basin. So this summer, we went and we wanted to say, okay, we looked at the big picture. But now as of the 2,000 meters that we are drilling right now, the focus is starting to be on the resource estimate. So now that we looked everywhere, we are selecting Sherlock as the main areas that we want to expand. And can we infill this 4 kilometers? Is it going to be maybe one open pit and another open pit somewhere else that we are going to delineate? So those are the things that we want to show to the market next year. How big can this be? I mean, we think it's a very large project. To put it in numbers, we'll have to wait for the engineers to really come up and see what we are drilling. But we think it has a potential for very large size. Many people mentioned to us that they think it's a low grade. It's a fair statement. At those grades, you think, oh, okay, well, there are porphyry deposits with a similar grade. But grade is important, and grade is king, and we heard it many times in this industry. But at the same time, you have to look at this is mineralization from surface. That's one. Second of all, if you compare it to a traditional copper project, porphyry. So in a porphyry deposit, you'd have similar grade, but it's disseminated throughout the entire body, the intrusive plug, let's say. And let's say you have a kilometer by kilometer, pretty much the entire thing is mineralized. It's homogeneous. In our case, the mineralization is actually not homogeneous. You're looking at sedimentary mineralization, sedimentary layers that are now at different orientations, more or less subvertical. And when you're going to mine them, you are going to have units which are non-mineralized, which is very cheap to mine them. That's waste. In porphyry, you don't have as much of that waste material. So we don't have to crush them, we don't have to grind them, we don't have to float them. The only material that you're going to process is actually going to be your mineralized units. And then the other advantage that more and more I think we see the industry going that direction, it's sorting. I think so far what some of the engineers suggested that it should be very easy to do a coarse crush of the material. And then you run a simple sorter, XRF, XRT sorter, and you come out of there with all the material being, let's say, around 1% copper. So the beauty is, in that case, your tailings pond is much smaller. Your infrastructure for the crush, grind, and mill is much smaller. You don't need to have a 50,000 tons per day mill. So it drops your capex, and it actually makes sure that your grade is much higher. In the porphyry, it's much harder to do because you have to pretty much mine the entire porphyry. So that's where we really think the size of the deposit can become a significant advantage here for us, because yes, it's a bit of a lower grade, but at the same time, it's continuous. You can really follow those units. And the other advantage is the fact that you should be able to upgrade it through the sorting.
And then, Kiril, it becomes a classic case of a smaller company like Kintavar with a market cap of about 40 million or so. Do you finance it yourself? Can you finance it yourself? Or are larger players going to be looking at you, and are they already? Or do you need to prove it out a little bit more?
So I'll just correct you here on the market cap.
Okay.
So we are not 40 million market cap. We are around 10 million market cap right
Okay.
now. We were until, let's say, September, but we did have a big drop in the last few months. We can discuss that later. But
yeah, we can even look at the stock chart. And actually, you know why I said 40? I'm working on a piece today for the digest for our subscribers, and that company has a 40 million market cap.
Oh, okay.
But here, so you had a big run up in the springtime. May as well talk about it right now. So you had some drilling results. Markets got really excited. Stock quintupled basically, and now you've kind of come full circle. So tell us about that experience when the stock did do as well as it did there for a while.
So I think one of the most important things that you have to look at our chart. We have our shareholder distribution is very good. Today, I can say that our float is less than 30%. Institutional is 25% plus. Geomega, the company that was that sold some of the properties and basically the spin out owns another 23%. So that's approximately 50%. Local shareholders from the region, they own approximately 25% of the company. So that's a very tight share structure. So we were an unknown company until, let's say, January of this year. And then suddenly we come up with those very interesting drill results, and the share price took off. And the beauty, I mean, that's from my days as an analyst, and you really want to make sure you have a good share structure. This is not a recycled company from 10 years ago that changed its name or consolidated their shares 5 times. So we really had this new interest. So whenever new investors are coming to the stock, that's what you see. So we went as high as 65 cents on the drill results and the excitement of the market. January, February were in general very good months for the commodities this year. We settled at around 40 cents. We went to the market, and the market rewarded us with $10 million. So we managed to raise at 40 cents. So it's a very favorable financing for the company, reduces dilution. And so for us, that was an extremely positive experience. And we stayed there roughly until September. We saw some profit taking in September, I guess before the tax loss and all that started coming out. Mm-hmm. Some groups that financed us a year ago started coming out, and that was basically the domino effect. And another group started coming out, and another group started coming out. So we kind of stabilized at around the 25 cent level, and then we had basically the beginning of tax losses coming in and starting to sell. It took us down towards 15 cents, and we've been roughly there. And we recently saw a couple of big blocks that were the final blocks of what we identified were looking for a new home, and we placed them into long-term hands with institutional investors, and we are very happy with the new investors that are coming in into this stock.
Okay, very good. We'll return to the stock a little bit later in our conversation. Sit right there. We're going to take a break here. And as we do that, we want to tell you about a special offer from Capital Ideas. It's a free 30-day trial. This gives you immediate access to our premium weekly digest, which contains research-based actionable investment ideas. These are the ones that are reserved for our paying subscribers, so you can get access to 4 issues and find out what you're missing out on. You're watching Capital Ideas TV Live. Actually, I should tell you at the bottom there, capitalideasmedia.com/30-day trial /. That's how you take advantage of that. So back with more of Kiril Mugerman, President, CEO of Kintavar Exploration. You're watching Capital Ideas TV Live. We'll be back after this.
We feel like we're the wave of the future in terms of how people test for things. We anticipate being the first sample-to-answer instrument that can process up to 22 pathogens at a time. Whatever you want to test for, you can do it on your own. You don't have to ship it away to a lab. You don't have to have an expensive microbiologist. It's something you can do on site. You collect that sample, you input it into the machine, you hit a button, an hour later you get the result you're looking for.
So we try to not focus on the noise of what everyone else is doing. Halo Labs is a manufacturer of oils and concentrates. We have, in the period of 18 months, taken a company from zero revenue in Oregon to being the second largest manufacturer in Oregon. We're not trying to be all things to all people. We're heads down execution people, because what we do quite well, and we don't know of any other group that does it better than ourselves.
RavenQuest Biomed is really three things: innovation, science, and opportunity. Orbital gardens are really cool technology. We've now converted them to the point of which the plant rotates around a center light. What we have done is created the control technology and changes to some of these gardens which allow for more nutrient impact into the plants. So what allows for us is to get high density within a very small space, which overall is going to lower our capital costs and our operating costs.
Welcome back to Capital Ideas TV Live with Kiril Mugerman, President and CEO of Kintavar Exploration. You can write your questions for him in the chat section on the right-hand side of our YouTube channel page, which you're watching right now. One person who's done that is Peter Bell. Now, this is a gentleman that Kiril says he knows, and he's got a lot of different sort of statements and questions here, but I'm going to focus on this one, and thanks, Peter, for taking part, by the way. You like he says he's a big fan, number one, and he likes this deposit model for the stratiform stuff, as he calls it. He says a lot of the stuff you're talking about, exoscarns and endoscarns, he's not really following, it's beyond him. But it's being, his question is being remobilized, essentially, is what you're doing.
So we are dealing with primary mineralization. We've seen some evidence of remobilization as well, which increases the grade. But in general, no. We are mostly dealing with primary mineralization and not remobilized. So remobilized usually increases the grade. And it's possible that we will find an area which will see a lot of pervasive remobilization. So that would basically increase the grade everywhere. It is one of the traps, let's say, as we refer to it, that we are looking for, or those pockets. So if there is a pocket, then it basically makes a very high grade zone, which becomes a great target for an open pit.
Okay, before the break, Kiril, we were getting into the possibility of Kintavar trying to develop this project on its own, or is this a classic case of down the road you're looking for a partner, or just somebody to come along, and once you prove it out, to a bigger player to take over Kintavar. So what are the prospects, do you think?
Okay, so the best way to answer that one. Again, don't forget, I used to work for one of the majors. I used to work as an analyst. And where we are today, we found a very large project. We generated a lot of interest from private equity groups, other corporates. It's very important to attract that attention, but you can't sit there and wait for them to go and write a check. If you sit there, they're not going to pay up for the value. So we are obviously going to continue advancing, exploring as if it's just us. We can't count on the market to be favorable because right now, I mean, look, the markets are average, let's say, in terms of copper. It's still pretty good copper price, around 280. We were happier at 330 because we know that around $3 and plus per pound, the interest that major copper producers have in acquiring new projects is much higher than when it's around 250. It's the large corporation mentality. When copper is high, you buy. When copper is low, you preserve your cash. Mm-hmm. So can this be developed by junior? I mean, we have no choice. We can't sit there and do only work and prepare it for a major to come. We have no choice but to keep advancing it. We have to do a resource estimate. We have to do a preliminary economic assessment. if something comes in the middle and a group says, okay, we want to be partners with you, we sit down and we look at it. We generated enough interest that we know that the copper market by itself has underexplored copper. It's very hard for a junior company to go and look for copper. How do you look for it? You go to Chile or Peru and you go come up with a porphyry deposit. Yes, that's doable. There are many companies that can go to Chile and Peru or to other areas in similar geological environments and say, okay, we found a porphyry deposit. But what's the capex? I mean, I can find you a couple of companies which are sitting on 10 billion pounds of copper, but you look at their capex, it's financeable by maybe maximum 5 companies on this planet. So it's not really a project viable. Same thing, you have in British Columbia a couple of projects which are quite interesting as well. And again, porphyries. But if you want to go outside of those traditional targets, and that's what we are seeing, if you look at the technical presentations, a lot of majors are starting to look at special geological conditions. So we fit in this special geological condition. We are in a metamorphic terrain. So basically metamorphic is a sedimentary or an igneous body, a geological body that got deformed or transformed through metamorphism. So high-grade temperature or pressure. So all those things alter the project and they suddenly look different. So we found all the big monsters which have been producing copper for the last 20, 30 years, but how do you find new projects? So it's very hard for juniors to find new big copper projects. But, and we know that majors are not necessarily the most active explorer in the world. So it comes to situations like this, a Michi discovery in a high-grade metamorphic terrain of a stratiform copper which looks different because of the metamorphic nature of it. And I think that's what really attracts interest. How many more this type of hidden deposits can be sitting there? This summer, we picked up a couple of other projects northern of Michi just because of this exact reason. So we looked at the geological database of Quebec, which Quebec is very good for. And we selected a couple of areas, again, sedimentary basins, with anomalies, I'd say almost identical to what Michi was before we came there. And we picked up the entire sedimentary basin, secured the ground, bought it for very good price, and basically now we think that the same model, stratiform copper, that we have on Michi, could be repeating itself on 2 other projects in Quebec.
Interesting. Now you've been talking pretty well exclusively about copper. Let's get to some of your gold prospects and gold properties in Abitibi, and also the fact, I think it's very interesting that there are a lot of well-known gold companies surrounding you with their own projects and properties. IM Gold, Kinross, Agnico, and the list goes on. So tell us about what you may be sitting on there.
Yeah, so in the Abitibi we do have some interesting gold projects which honestly we staked them ourselves roughly 5 years ago, 6 years ago, before Kintavar was created, when those properties were still within Geomega. And they ended up being very good acquisitions through staking. Since then, several discoveries were made around us. IM Gold is actively working on 2 projects there. Cisco is working on a major project which we all know Windfall is advancing pretty well. You mentioned all the other companies. So we have one property, Riviera Leg, which is sitting in between 2 greenstone belts, and Agnico is sitting within one of the greenstone belts. So I think the best way of describing it, we have a very good address. We've seen some recent results from the Nelligan project, where IM Gold is a JV partner, and that's just basically across the property boundary from our Agnico property. So I think we're very well positioned, and we are hoping that gold price will be doing pretty good next year, and some more activity in the area next year.
Let's take a question here, Kiril. This is from Francis Paquette, and he's basically saying that they're asking, will copper demand spike up with the electrification of transport? Do you see more demand for copper? We see demand for lithium and cobalt and so on, but what about copper?
So yes, in short, the demand will increase with electrification. From the research that I've been doing, it's not only the electric cars that will drive the demand, but it's as well the infrastructure to charge all those vehicles, because obviously we have to bring the current there, the electricity, and for that we need copper. So if you put the two of them together, yes, you will see an increase. And considering the copper is very close to a supply deficit, we think the electrification will be just enough to put copper into a supply deficit, which will drive the copper price up.
All right, and now let's ask about your ownership structure here. Another question here from Peter Bell. He likes the fact that you have a Quebec pension fund as a shareholder. He thinks that's bullish, and he's wondering, are other groups being courted or kicking the tires? Do you expect? Are you happy with the capital structure currently, or do you foresee more bigger sort of institutional players coming in?
Honestly, we are pretty happy with our structure right now. The Caisse de Dépôt is the pension fund. They are an insider. They own approximately 13% of the company. The other Quebec institutions altogether are around 10%. We have a private equity group with a couple of percent in the company, and the recent trading that we saw in the last few weeks brought more institutional investors from Europe this time. So I think, the structure is tightening up more and more. And I think that's going to be very, very favorable to positive drill results that basically the drilling that we are doing right now. And all that we expect probably January, February, all the drilling results. And a bit earlier I mentioned some of those sorting techniques that we have to try and to demonstrate. So all that we are expecting as well, probably around February, March. So we already drilled a metallurgical drill hole that is going for metallurgical work, because when it comes to a copper concentrate, you want to demonstrate that you can produce high purity concentrate, higher recoveries, and if those two are good, to put it together with a potential to beneficiate the ore through sorting, bodes very well for the project.
Okay, a few more questions here before we wrap things up. Kiril, we mentioned on a few occasions, as you mentioned, you're also the president and CEO of Geomega Resources. Not every CEO is president and CEO of more than one company. One is usually enough of a handful. So how does that work?
So Geomega was the mother company of this transaction, of the spin-out. And I remain president CEO of both companies. I think it's very important for me to control the burn rate of both companies. I think, like, we are junior companies. It's a fact. We don't make money. We burn money. And it's very important for investors to understand how their money is spent. In this case, I guess I don't sleep that much, but basically I run both companies. My salary is split between the two companies. You can see all those numbers in the documents which are available publicly. And so my cost to each company is actually very limited. But yes, they are very different companies as well. So that's part of my background as an industrial minerals analyst. I know very well the rare earth elements sector, and Geomega was becoming more and more focused on the technology to develop the technology right now and develop the mine in the future. So that's very important to make sure you don't mix too much, because it's hard to convince an investor invest in this company that does left and does right, or sells apples and sells computers at the same time. It doesn't make sense. So
Right.
we really had to separate the two companies, but it makes sense. And at the moment, we are building a team, and we have now an in-house CFO for both companies. So things are starting to fit better. The geological team is very good. Alain Caillet, as I mentioned earlier, plus we have another 3-4 permanent geos. With all the drilling that we did this summer, and we had as much as 45 people on the ground. So there was a lot of work done. So all those teams are slowly building up with the key people for the work for next year.
Well, you must be good at time management, if nothing else, running two companies.
Right.
Now, let's come full circle to the stock. as we wrap up the show, and give the investor message, basically. You've summarized it well the last 40 minutes or so as to why investors should pay attention to Kintavar and what you're developing. So what's your ultimate message right now?
I'd say the main thing is you have to look at the way the stock traded. I mean, yes, it got hit big time September, October, November, but right now it's basically trading at a small premium to the cash position of the company. It's a very good entry point for the people that missed this a year ago when they heard Strategy from Copper, but they had no idea what that has. So since then, I think we, over the last 2 months, by understanding who wants to get out, who are the sellers, we managed to restructure it, and that float, that 30% float, is probably now down to 20% float. I think we are even in a better share structure, and the investors understand what's there than we were in January when we drilled for the first time there. I think those 2,000 meters, which are now the first 2,000 meters going towards, which are being drilled with the idea of giving us a resource estimate, a maiden resource estimate, are going to be really the indicator of where we're going in 2019. So I definitely tell the investors, get ready for those results for January, February. We are very happy with what we see on the ground. The project is extremely, geologically extremely well prepared for now the resource drilling. And we think we should be able to deliver those results. And together with delivering the results, and we'll be taking it to the next step.
All right, very good, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much, Mark.
We appreciate it. And we're going to be following your story the next year or so. You're going to be coming in quarterly, roughly, to update our subscribers, update our viewers. So we'll be looking forward to the next results and information from Kintavar. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
All right, to Kiril Mugerman. He is the president and CEO of Kintavar. Almost said Technologies. It's not Technologies.
No.
Exploration, Kintavar Exploration. We're going to wrap it up, but we want to tell you one more time about our special offer from Capital Ideas, a 30-day free trial. You get access to our premium weekly digest, which has great investment ideas every week. And this is usually reserved for our paying subscribers. So see what you're missing. You just have to go to capitalideasmedia.com/30-day trial/. Thanks again for watching and for taking part, especially you, Peter Bell. You rode up a storm. All right, and we'll see you next time. Take care.